I'm going to call to order 15th, 2022. If you could please join me in the flag salute. Erica, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Chairman Miguel Magallanes.
Here.
Vice Chairman Aaron Todd.
Present.
Commissioner Carrie Broggie.
Here.
Commissioner Albert Mendez.
Here.
Commissioner Jamie Labor has an excused absence.
Thank you. Section 4, oral communications. This is an opportunity for citizens to present or comment on non-related agenda items. Do we have any speakers tonight? Seeing that there's none, we'll move over to Section 5, the consent calendar, 5A. If we could have a motion to adopt the meeting minutes from May 18th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Section 6 with public hearing. Item 6A.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. Give you a short presentation on this.
6A is the electrical charging station.
This is zoning ordinance amendment 22-03 for electric vehicle charging systems. This will add new code section 6.04.3432 to the municipal code, which will set forth procedures for electric vehicle charging systems to be processed and permitted. This is being done pursuant to state laws. It'll bring our code up to date with the state. There are two primary state laws affecting this amendment. That's AB 1236, which requires local agencies to adopt an ordinance, which is what is being presented here to you today. AB 970, which will be effective coming January 2023, will provide us with our procedural requirements that the city must follow when an application to install electric vehicle charging stations are proposed. Your resolution tonight is to make a recommendation to City Council. A summary of the requirements and procedures that will be built into our municipal code as a result of these state laws. The city will be developing a checklist, so that'll allow applicants to run through all of our local city requirements. That'll be put together between now and City Council's meeting. The applications must satisfy the building code. They must not have a specific adverse impact on public health and safety. The decision to approve them is appealable to the Planning Commission. Up to 25 charging stations would only have a 5-day review period for completeness at the city, and then 20 days for approval after that. Over 25 charging stations has 10 days for completeness review and 40 days thereafter for approval. So pretty short time frames. City parking spaces would be reduced to accommodate any of the charging stations or any equipment related to the charging stations. Under CEQA, this is exempt pursuant to section 15061B3. Staff's recommendation is City Council or Planning Commission make a recommendation to City Council under Resolution 22-1038, recommending approval of zoning ordinance amendment 2203, adding new section 6.04.3432 to the municipal code, setting forth procedures for electric vehicle charging systems and finding of exemption from CEQA. You can take any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any questions from the Planning Commission? Any of the commissioners?
Yeah, I just had one just for my own information. There was reference a couple different times about specific adverse impact upon public health and safety, and I'm kind of rattling my brain here trying to figure out what would that look like? How would we know if there was something that was specific adverse impact upon public health?
If they're going to be in a location that might cause an accident, say it might cause a vehicle accident, it might maybe obstruct views for cars turning a corner. Anything else? Maybe in a residential zone, you might have other health considerations to consider. I don't think EMF is a consideration these days, but mostly probably pertaining to visual impacts or visual obstructions, I would think. Liz, can you think of any others? Health and safety wise?
No, you've stated exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Maybe the soils might have some contamination in it. We could find something like that. If maybe they're proposing this on a site that's been contaminated, we would see that might be a health and safety impact and require further study.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another potential scenario could be if the electrical infrastructure that they're trying to tie into is outdated or something like that, and they were proposing this new like high voltage system.
Yeah.
I really don't know how specific, but the examples Brian mentioned were good. The charging stations would have to be compliant with the electrical code and building code anyway, so that would probably pick up the example that I mentioned there.
Do we currently have any businesses, or does the city plan to install any of these?
Sierra Bank is actually installing 2, I believe, right now. So they've already been permitted. It wasn't through the streamlining process because this wasn't in effect yet, but you know, they offset 2 of their existing parking spaces with EV charging stations, and they're ready to go. I think they're starting construction fairly soon.
So it's approved.
Yeah, it's approved.
Concrete plan check.
Hmm?
Is there any other locations that has been looked at for that besides city property, like maybe the Vaughn's or other shopping center?
Vaughn's hasn't come in with anything like that yet. We have seen it on a proposed project that's currently in the works. And we do have stalls that designate clean air type parking. For example, at Grocery Outlet, they have some existing stalls that are designated for that. They may come in and decide to convert those to electric vehicle. But once this ordinance gets adopted, perhaps we might to see more of that, because I do hear the discussion. I did hear the Red Engine Brewery talk a bit about that as well. So that might be on their radar to come back for that.
Those are all private, private areas, not city property, right? So the city does not have anything in plan right now to do anything for our public parking lots, not yet.
This is completely anecdotal, but the one example where I've seen this in another city where this law was kind of invoked by an applicant, it was a large grocery store with like a large parking lot, strip mall type set. So I think it would be kind of like the Vaughn's type of setting in Fillmore. It was sort of similar to that.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because I've seen it in Target parking lots, like the Tesla
Sure.
type charging stations, and
Yep.
I've seen it at city halls. So there was just more of is it designed to have people come up to park at city property, or is it something that's outside of that realm?
I think more or less now it's private market. If they see that it's going to bring business in, for example, as mentioned, Teslas, so maybe Target gets a lot of customers who have Teslas, so it was worthwhile. City Hall, we did consider one in the past. We looked at getting some grant money that didn't come through. But
We're still pursuing that.
there may be some other grants in the future.
Yeah.
That we may install it here at City Hall. We have a lot across the street that we looked at. So, yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure.
Regarding the checklist, is there a detailed kind of idea of what that's going to look like and what that covers? Because it sounds like the health and safety kind of would be tied into that.
Yeah, the health and safety will kind of be looked at on a case-by-case basis, obviously, but our checklist will have kind of our standard protocol of, this many copies of plans, both digital sets and hard copies.
Okay.
What kinds of information needs to be put on a plan. There's specific information that goes with drawings, whether it needs architectural stamp, all those kinds of procedural things. And then it will have a disclaimer in there that, it must not have any health and safety impacts. And we can discuss a little bit about what those might be. But we kind of want to leave that a little bit open to interpretation because we don't know what might occur on any given site. Sometimes when you put too much information, it doesn't allow for full evaluation. So,
So it's still based per site, per project?
yeah, when we evaluate on a health and safety basis, it'll be on a case by case.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would specify that in our checklist.
Brian, I had just one other minor issue here on the ordinance itself, under the first page, the second whereas paragraph, there's a typo on the AB number.
Okay.
The one in the parens is flipped.
Okay, we can change that
Yeah,
before you
before
sign
anybody
it.
signs it, yeah.
Yep, we'll change that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
That's all I got.
All right.
all right,
So we're recommending body, right?
you are.
Okay.
I can put back up the recommendation if that helps you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
And maybe before taking a vote, just remember to.
Public hearing.
Yeah,
Okay.
any public comment.
We'll open up the public, thank you, Brian, for the presentation. We'll open up the public hearing if there's anybody from the city that would like to comment. We'll close the public hearing, seeing that there's nobody, and we'll make a recommendation.
I'd like to move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 22-1039, recommending City Council approval of zoning ordinance amendment 22-03, adding a new section 6.04.3432 to the Fillmore Municipal Code, setting forth procedures for electric vehicle charging systems and finding of exemption from CEQA.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Moving over to item 6B, we'll hand it over to staff for presentation.
Thank you, Chair and Planning Commission. This item is the Highway 126 RV Storage Sales and Service Project. This is for modification number 3. The project is located along Highway 126. It's in the commercial highway zone. You'll know it as it's across the street from the El Dorado Mobile Home Park, just as you come into town from east to west. The project was previously approved by your commission years ago. It involves 2 parcels totaling 11 acres. They'll be merged into one parcel. It has RV sales, storage, and service. It had been modified under modification 2 to 2 buildings, A and B, for retail, sales office, and displays. Building B, however, is optional. Building C would be used for office space and servicing of new RVs and storage. New RVs. Open RV storage, so these are the open spaces, totals 367, and sales stalls are 41 spaces. This is an overview of the site plan and the landscaping view. As you can see, the arrangement of the buildings and the open parking. Summary of the buildings are A, B, and C. Again, retail sales, 5,900 square feet, showroom, 5,400 square feet, and service area, 46 square feet, so a total of 16,000 square feet of buildings. The time extension background, there have been a total of 3 time extensions in the past. The project was originally approved by the Planning Commission January 16, 2019. You saw modification number 1 in December 2019, which eliminated 4 of the buildings, and it extended the project for 1 year from January 16 to July 16. I'm sorry, it was 6 months, to July 16, 2020. And then in February 2021, the Community Development Director granted an additional 1-year time extension from July 16, 2020 to July 16, 2021. And then in June 16, 2021, the Planning Commission approved modification number 2, extending the expiration date again from July 16, 2021 to July 16, 2022, which is the pending expiration date that's being considered. The applicant applied for modification number 3, which was submitted a couple weeks ago. They're proposing to extend the expiration date to July 16, 2023. That's a 1-year time extension. and that would modify the conditions of approval as shown here with the strikeout expiration date and the new date underlined. Just a short summary of submittals to date. So once you get through planning commission approval, you then go into your construction documents, and then from your construction documents, you go into construction. So they got into the construction documents, and that's where things kind of stalled out. In December 2018, they submitted grading plans. March through October of 2019, building plans were submitted for checks 1 and 2. And then in January of 19 and October 19, precise grading were submitted and reviewed. And then that's when most of the delay happened between then and just recently, May 23rd, the precise grading was again resubmitted for engineering review. And I believe the building plans are being updated to the 2019 building code.
I'm sorry, you said they have been?
They have
They
not
are
been
being,
submitted.
okay.
So the building plans have not been submitted. The only thing that's been submitted since October of 19 is the precise grading.
Okay.
Modification number 3, when staff evaluated it, determined that substantial progress had not been made, had not been demonstrated to initiate the permit, which is the entitlement. Staff report for modification 2 specifically said that staff would not support an additional 1-year time extension beyond 2021, but, or would support to 2021, would not support any further extensions beyond 2021. And also consistent with Fillmore Municipal Code, which says that the review authority may, upon application being filed at least 1 day prior to expiration and for good cause, grant 1 time extension not to exceed 1 year. So we've gone through 2 1-year time extensions and a 6-month time extension. Under CEQA, there had been a mitigated negative declaration previously prepared and an addendum to the MND prepared prior to that. The Planning Commission action tonight would be, excuse me, exempt from CEQA. CEQA does not require a new environmental document when denial is taking place. Staff's recommendation is that Planning Commission adopt Resolution 22-1040 denying Modification 3, request for an additional 1-year time extension to July 16, 2023. And I believe the applicant's here to take any questions or to give a presentation as well. And I'll be here to answer questions.
Thank you, Brian.
I'll play the first video.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Don Duncan, and I am the applicant. I would love to be there tonight. Unfortunately, I'm homesick with COVID. Tonight, you're going to learn that my project got derailed for 2 years because my 50-50 partner got cancer and passed away. In January of 2022, I was able to buy out his interests. Since that time, I have been working diligently to move forward. As it turns out, 6 months' time is not enough. In fact, it's impossible. I urge you to listen carefully tonight and consider all that has been accomplished. I am asking for an extension so that I can get this development completed. This RV sales, service, and storage business is going to make both the city of Fillmore and the residents of Fillmore proud. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brian. We'll move, do we have any questions immediate for staff right now? Or can we move into
I'm good.
public speaker parts?
I think there's a couple applicant representatives.
Okay.
I think the gentleman.
The
has a-
applicant's architect is here, and I
Okay.
believe he'll follow up with the presentation from now.
One second, do we need to do a time on it? No.
Because it's the
It's the
applicant
Yeah.
presentation.
We're
Yeah.
open, okay.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners, Chair, staff. My name is Mark Pettit, and I'm with Lauterbach and Associates Architects. And it's good to be here tonight. Our civil engineer is also here, and Mr. Duncan's business manager is also here to say a few words when I'm completed with this presentation. We've been working on this project since 2017, and as was mentioned earlier, we had our approval. We submitted our plans into building and safety, went through plan check, that's architectural, structural, mechanical, electrical, the whole thing, and the civil engineering plans. And at the time that they came back out of plan check, there were some issues that came up, especially with one of the partners, Mr. Ashley, who took ill. When he took ill, and you'll see there's some emails, some correspondence around, he basically said, I can't be involved in the project anymore. He notified us, and then basically he left to go to Idaho, and a few months later he passed away. As the project was being set into having the ownership moved to Don, it never happened during those 9 months that from when he got ill to when he passed away. When he passed away in September of 2020, in the middle of COVID, the estate got involved with everything, and it took from when he passed away in September all the way to this past January to resolve the estate. Now, during that time frame, we were working on all sorts of options and all sorts of things. In the middle of COVID, we met with city staff. We met with people that the city recommended us that if we wanted to sell, since Mr. Ashley had passed away, so we dealt with them for a number of months. A lot of activity going on. As it was getting closer to the end of 2021, it looked like everything was going to come through and everything was going to work. So we started working on cost estimates because things have changed dramatically in the last 2 years with construction prices and consultants, being available, contractors, subcontractors being available to do the work. So that whole process and that time frame took several months. Our civil engineer is here, and he can update you on the efforts that we made through the end of 2021, even though Mr. Duncan had no control of it, but going in then into 2022, knowing that we had this date pending on us. So I just wanted to emphasize that you can see on the chart that we have been working on this diligently. There are so many different aspects that come into play. It is not a simple project, as you can imagine. Otherwise, this property would have been developed a long time ago. So I wanted to also mention that through this process, also dealing with Caltrans and putting a reclaimed water pipe underneath the freeway, very, very long process. So we think that this is an excellent project for the city. Don is committed to this project. I also have some letters in there from his bank, and his financing has been lined up. So we really would like the opportunity to have an extension on here so we can wrap everything up. I'd like to introduce Scott Ewells, our civil engineer, and when he's done, I have a few more things to say. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Scott Ewells. I'm with Delane Engineering, the civil engineer for the project. And so, as you can see from the chart, we've got the green area starting in January of this year, of 2022. That's when we really got re-engaged on the project, once Don was able to get control of it. And we started working on our precise grading plans and updating them because it had been a while and there was changes that needed to be made and cleanup that had to be done. And so we did that, and in March we sent the plans out for bid. We got that information back to make sure everything was lined up, and we've submitted and received our WDID number. That's the stormwater permit for general construction permit. We received that in May of this year. That was a requirement for Caltrans for their permitting. And as soon as we got that, we've submitted to Caltrans. We have the utility connections in with Caltrans, and we also have the driveway permit encroachment in with Caltrans right now. The driveway encroachment is a little bit complicated because there's signal warrants for that Caltrans looks at that we don't meet, but I know that there's a lot of community support and city support to have a signal at that location for the El Dorado community across the street. And so we're pushing that forward, but that permit will be a longer lead time. The utility permit will be much quicker. And so back in 2019, if you can believe it, we have correspondence from city staff saying, do these, I think it's 7 items, which are your Caltrans encroachment permit for temporary water, your SWIP, pay some fees and sign the conditions of approval, and we're ready to go to Mylar and issue a permit for remedial grading. And so we are in that place now where we have submitted to Caltrans. We had the temporary water permit through Caltrans, and that had since expired, and so it's being renewed right now with Vito at Caltrans along with our other permits. And so as soon as we have that renewal, we've already signed the conditions of approval, or Don has, and we just pay the fees, and we would be ready on our end to pull a remedial grading permit and actually start working if that would still be supported by the city. And as noted in the presentation by staff, we've also submitted our full precise grading package, drainage reports, there's traffic, there's several reports that are included in that. So from our standpoint, we will be in a position to pull a remedial grading permit if supported by city staff, potentially even near the date of when the permit expires. However, for the full precise grading and building and Caltrans work as it relates to the signal, those are longer lead items, and we have just started on them. In terms of Caltrans, we submitted in May to Caltrans for all of our encroachment permits, and we've already received correspondence back from Vito at Caltrans talking about the signal warrants and some of the items that he would be looking for in order to be able to support that signal. So those are all of the things that's been happening since January of this year. I do believe that we are very close on the grading permit side, and a little bit further behind that for building and the intersection with the signalization. But we are ready to move forward, and we are ready to go to construction, as been noted by Mark previously. So I'll let Mark come back up, and then I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you.
So, as you can see, a lot of work has been done. We still have some work to go to have the complete building and all the other pieces coming in, but we would like to have the opportunity to do this. There's been a tremendous amount of time and effort and money put in to make this happen, and this would have happened some years ago if Don didn't get sick, or Mike didn't get sick, and of course leave and pass away. That's really what set us back. With interest rates and construction costs and everything else rising, believe me, we would have liked to have done this some time ago. But we are asking for a year extension. At this point, we're so close that we would like, if there's a different time frame, 6 months maybe, we're open to all of that to make sure that we can get our grading permit and basically stop the clock. So we feel that this project is an asset to Fillmore. It's going to be an economic success, we believe, with everything that we've been going on, with all the calls that Don's been getting for people in the community to house their RV and to buy a new RV and have their RVs service, all here with the financial impact for the city. So we think this is an excellent project. We're committed to moving forward and doing what needs to be done, and we'd like to ask for your support tonight. So thank you, and I'll be available afterwards to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. No. We have some speaker cards. If we could have Melissa Owen, please come to the front. Michael, do we open the public hearing for
Yeah,
this?
are you a member of the public, or are you a representative? You're a member of the public, okay, very good. Yeah, so you go ahead and open
Okay.
the.
I'll open the public hearing, and we'll have Melissa be the first speaker. I'm going to be setting the clock for 5 minutes. There'll be a sum up, yellow alert come up at 1 minute.
Yep,
So I'll start your time.
thank you. I'm a little nervous, so forgive me. I'm talking all the time on the phone, but I just don't talk to him very often in front of people, so forgive me, but I hope I get my point across. Hello, my name is Melissa Owen, and as you know, Don really wanted to be here, but he does have COVID, so he asked me to come in place to express our need and his desire to open up Highway 126. I have worked for Don for more than 10 years, and I manage his offices for All Valleys RV Storage, Moore Park RV Storage, Fillmore Outdoor Storage here in Fillmore on A Street, and 101 RV Rentals. I'm a busy girl. If you investigate any of our businesses, you'll see that we all have 5-star ratings. We're all about customer service and attendance to our customers and their needs. We have storage, we sell, and we repair RVs on a daily basis. Our lot in Simi Valley, where we have all these services, is the most desirable lot within 200 miles around. He hopes to make that here for Highway 126, sorry. Highway 126 will be super successful for all those that are involved. I have witnessed firsthand on how hard Don has struggled to get his project back on track after his partner has passed away. He is relentless in pushing progress forward. That is why that we have the success that we enjoy right now for the other businesses that we have. I just wanted to say that the demand for service and sales and storage in any community is high. I turn away a lot of people throughout the week because the demand is there. I think that Highway 126 would be very successful for your community and surrounding communities to bring business to your area. Please approve the extension and watch the progress that will be made in the next few months from this man and his team. The demand for sales, service, and works and storage is off the charts. You will see. Please approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another speaker card for Scott.
Yeah, I had put in the speaker card.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. That sums up the speaker cards. So we'll close the public hearing unless there's somebody else that would like to speak on it, and we'll move into commissioner comments, questions, into staff and the applicant. I had a question for staff in regards to the process of plan approval that happened back in 2019. Then you mentioned that construction documents get approved, and then that rolls into the building construction.
Correct.
Does a full set needs to be submitted by July 16th, 2022 in order to have the clock to stop? Or how does that work? Do they need to start building? What's the timeframe looking
Well,
like?
under the municipal code for a development permit, it does say that you would have to start construction within the first year. So we don't have the construction started.
Okay.
And that's in the code. I have it here. Yeah, so that's basically, I don't think if they submitted plans, a full set of plans between now and July 16 of this year, if that would be deemed sufficient progress. It wouldn't, correct? No.
No, it wouldn't. It'd have to start plan check. We would submit it to Bureau Veritas to start plan check. City staff would start plan check. and they would make corrections. We'd go through a couple of rounds, so quite a number of months would go by before they would start construction.
Thank you.
Please be aware, though, the applicant stating the preliminary grading or rough grading, they're stating that it might be ready by July, right? But the rest of the construction is months from now.
So instead of a year, we could recommend 6 months?
Possibly that might be a question for the city attorney, since our code says you're allowed to grant 1 year, one year time extension. I don't know if we can deviate from that.
Yeah, and my recommendation based on that municipal code language would not be to grant an extension. And frankly, we're already past the point that we've already given prior extensions, and it's there in the municipal code. It potentially sets a precedent for other projects. There's the possibility that's, I don't know if it's realistic in this case, but like if somebody wanted to challenge the decision or challenge the project, could do that based on that extension. I'm not sure how realistic it is, but that's what the municipal code provides.
Thank you.
So based on the municipal code, then our hands are tied, like we only have one option?
I mean, it's ultimately the planning commission's decision, but for consistency with the municipal code, that's the recommended option, would be to not grant a further extension.
Okay, well, I have a question probably to pose better to the applicant. I guess bearing in mind the municipal code issue that we have to deal with, and the number of extensions that have already been granted, and albeit, I've a whole lot of empathy for, what you've gone through with your partner's death, and then with COVID, that slows everything down. So I understand all that. We're kind of in a dilemma right now because of the municipal code as well. So I two questions. Number one, how different have the plans been changed? What's been altered with regard to the plans that were first submitted way back to City Council? Was it 2017 initially, when you first brought the project forward? And I was extremely in favor of it at that point in time. But I know that throughout the years, there have been some revisions, things that have changed enough that, and I'm not thinking of anything specific, but I know that it's evolved enough that I have some concerns about what it's evolved into. So I almost feel like we're looking at a different project in some ways versus what we first saw way back when. So that's my first question. And then second, I'm assuming that to put a stop to it now, if the commission were to deny the extension now, your hesitation, and I'm just thinking out loud here, your hesitation to probably resubmit and start over again would be the cost factor on things that you've already invested money in. So, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but is that a possibility that you could come back in and resubmit and start over?
Maybe if I can answer your first question. What's changed from our previous approval? Nothing.
Well, you had 4 buildings, and that was reduced to...
So we have the opportunity for 3 buildings.
Okay.
And because Don is now into it, there's a pretty good chance, we talked about this for the last 6 months at least, to come back in and to add the buildings that were originally removed underneath the first. So there was a difference of opinion with the previous partner, and that's why they came back in with those being gone. But we really would like to have those when it's appropriate. So we are not planning on changing anything from what was originally proposed.
So the number of RV sales spots versus the number of RV rental spots?
They're the same.
Are all the same?
Yes.
I remember there was an issue with the undergrounding of the electrical
that went to council.
That went to council?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, what we're looking at is the first modification to go forward so we don't have to come back and kind of cloud the issue. But after we get going on this stuff, the intention is to come back and see what we can do to add those buildings that were removed. To answer your second question, it's the issue is timing and costs. Since we've had this delay, costs have gone up about 35%. And you know, the demand is there, but then the timing, it took us about 2+ years to kind of go through the first process, and we're concerned about the timing and everything else that's involved with it. So obviously, COVID was a big deal. A lot of the cities are modifying their codes and adding an additional year for the COVID delays. So we were kind of thinking of, you know, if could be something down that line because of, you know, what we've all gone through. So hopefully I answered your questions.
Yeah.
Could I make one more
Sure.
clarification too? The buildings that were removed per the modification, they were the back buildings, the storage, like metal buildings. The two front nice looking buildings are still included in that, and one of the maintenance buildings and the other maintenance building was removed. So for the most part, it was back of house, if you will, buildings that were taken out as part of that.
Yeah,
modification.
and I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and I understand your point, your reason for making that point, but it still presents the issue of the changes to it have to be reviewed again. So,
From a timing standpoint, sure.
yeah.
Okay.
And then getting back to what you said initially about 2.5 years, and that other places have already extended, you know, a year, for example, due to COVID constraints that everybody faced. But we're going on 2.5 years here. When this was first presented, like I said earlier, I thought this was a fantastic project. I still think it's a fantastic project. And so, you know, my thinking is, you know, I'm not real clear on your answer with regard to starting over again, resubmitting from scratch, you know, submitting a whole new application. Is it financially feasible for you to do that?
I can't speak for the owner since
True,
I'm
yeah.
the architect,
Yeah.
but from what I understand, the timing and the costs involved, there's going to be eventually a straw that breaks the camel's back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially as we see construction costs and everything else going up, it's a challenging time to do that. That's why Don spent a lot of time through this downtime getting his finances in order, and you can see by the letters from the bank that they were willing to do that. And I know that Scott, from the civil point of view, spent a couple months just working with subcontractors and getting budgets and costs, and they kind of went through the roof. So that's what's happened in the last couple months to kind of today, or the end of May. So we're very hesitant. We don't know, but you know, we just would hate for additional delay in the costs and everything else involved to just be an issue, and so it doesn't go forward. As I mentioned, this property is not an easy property to develop. It's very expensive, especially with all the conditions that we've got to do.
Right.
And we're committed to do that, but like I said, I think that there's just a lot of additional costs that a typical project wouldn't have to deal with. So, and of course, our commitment and Don's commitment for this traffic signal, which has been a big deal and is expensive, but just dealing with Caltrans on that and trying to get them to kind of change their mind with the warrants, it's been very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we're committed to do everything that we can to make that work. So, but I can't right now tell you, you know, would we do that? If everything was static and no change in costs, I'm sure that would happen because he's committed to do this project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question for staff. What does the process look like if Planning Commission denies it and they have to resubmit a new project? What is the time frame? What is submittals? What type of submittals have to happen with what they have done already?
Yeah, they would go back to fill out the current application form. Thankfully, they would already have plans prepared. So they would submit that, and then we would look at it for completeness review. We would assess the project again, whether it's conforming with the zone. But it seemed like a lot of the design and work has kind of been done, and now that they have their due diligence in terms of pricing and construction timeframes, they may be able to fine tune it a bit. And it sounded to me like maybe they're considering additional changes. So there would be a modification 4 after modification 3. But perhaps it would give them a chance to build in all of those changes now so that you're back starting with a kind of a fresh look at it. And you're a new body, and the community has kind of changed a bit around. So you would have a fresh chance to look at that. It might take 6 months, I would say, 6 to 9 months to get it back to Planning Commission, somewhere in that neighborhood. But most of the time will depend on them submitting, receiving any comments and turning back around plans for us to review. But it would probably be quicker than normal because we're all very familiar with the property. So 6 to 9 months, I'd say, to get it back to your Planning Commission. And then, then they'd be submitting construction documents shortly thereafter. So you
And
can
then a
weigh that
year.
out with the 1-year time extension you have now in front of you. With that process, it'd be comparable.
And then after coming to us and being approved, then if it gets approved, then it goes 1 more year.
Then they would have a year from that point
Okay.
to start construction. Correct.
Thank you, Brian.
Could we make a comment on that?
Sure.
So I think the one of the items, and I appreciate the comments, but really it's the time frame to get to construction. So we're ready now with grading plans within months to go to construction and to build the project. And so, yes, the entitlement may be 12 months and the extension may be 12 months, but then we still have the construction document review period, and then we get to construction. And so you're really looking at providing an extension for us and the project and having it into construction in a matter of months, or into construction maybe, maybe not, and in 2 years.
How do you arrive at 2 years, construction in 2 years?
Because we have 6 to 9 months of entitlement, which in the private world, it means 9 to 12 months of entitlement. And then once we have the entitlements, then we have to resubmit for first plan check back through plan check. The Caltrans permits will all expire. And so we have to resubmit to Caltrans for new permits. And so we have 12 months of entitlement, and we probably have another 6 to 12 months of construction document and permitting review with the city and Caltrans and Watershed Protection District before we could actually start construction.
Okay.
As Scott had mentioned earlier, the first permit, because it wasn't clear on permits, but the first permit is the grading permit, or the, what do you call it?
Remedial grading
Remedial grading permit. It's a physical permit that we pay fees for and everything. That's what stops the clock, or what we believe should stop the clock. And we're, like I said, we're, within a couple months of that. Because the plans have been submitted, they're in process. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the review.
Yeah, I mean, the plans have been submitted for that, and the remedial grading is not the full utilities in the driveway, because that includes Caltrans. It's getting the site ready, and from a rough grading standpoint, and clear it and rough grade it and do all of the over-X and removals so that the site is graded in a pad and ready for utilities and ready for pavement and all of those other things that come along with the full precise grading package.
And that covers grading and the permit. Does that stop the clock, Kevin, or do we need a full architectural, structural, engineering set and approved?
Yes.
And breaking ground?
Yeah,
foundation?
so the zoning ordinance says you have to be under construction. So
And is grading under construction?
That means we've got to be ready to issue a building permit and start construction.
And start inspections
Yeah,
after that?
well, not just start construction, but we need to be through plan check The applicant will need to have paid development impact fees. So hopefully he's calculated all the financing for development impact fees, and that's our most expensive fee. And plan check alone is going to take quite a number of months before it's approved. So rough grading or remedial grading, they're going to go out there and dig the soil 4 or 5 feet deep, whatever, recompact, and then it can sit for months and months.
Remedial grading, as we have it set up and the timing, as Kevin mentioned, we go in, we put the grades down within certain tenths of finished grade elevation. We bring everything in for trenches for conduits and, you know, all those types of things. We could even, at that point, submit all the wall plans because they're part of that for the back retaining wall. So there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it is months of work to get that. But we have to get that and get a pad cert so we can actually pull the building permit. So we're not talking, as was mentioned earlier, this is a long process, even with the remedial grading permit. And in the approvals, I don't see anything, maybe city attorney, it says pulling a permit. And in every municipality that we've worked with in Ventura County, before you can even get to pulling a building permit, you have to have your remedial grading done, your grading and utilities done, before you can pull that. So it's a part of that process. So, and like I said, when we were looking at this from day one, we've had conversations with Public Works that the remedial grading is the first permit that we need. So we've been doing that with that understanding for 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, and that was part of the correspondence that we have from city staff back in 2019 when they gave us the list of items that we needed to achieve in order to pull a remedial grading permit. And one of those is paying fees. And it's not the full fees, it's the fees that are related to the grading plan check and grading inspection, which were right around $78,000. And we are prepared to pay those once we're told by the city that we're allowed to come and pull that grading permit. And then once we're in construction and grading, the plan check continues on the rest of the civil improvements as well as the building plans. And as staff mentioned, we submitted in May for the full precise grading plan check, which would be all of the utilities and paving and retaining walls and all of that, all those improvements that would be needed so that we can get our zone clearances for the buildings to actually construct the buildings.
The question that's before the Planning Commission, though, is whether to grant the year extension or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it's helpful, but I can read that section of the zoning ordinance to you, and you can hear the language, both the planning commissioners and the applicant.
That'd be great.
Okay, it's section 6.04.6635, development permit expiration. And it's a little long, and I'll read it as clearly as I can. Within 1 year of development permit approval, construction commencement shall have occurred or the permit shall become null and void. Additionally, if after construction commencement, work is discontinued for a period of 1 year, then the permit shall become null and void. If a project is built in pre-approved phases, each subsequent phase shall have 1 year from the previous phase's date of construction commencement to the next phase date of construction commencement to have occurred, unless otherwise specified in the permit, or the permit shall become null and void. If the application for the development permit also involves the approval of a tentative map, the phasing shall be consistent with the tentative map, and the permit shall be exercised prior to the expiration of companion tentative map. There's no tentative map in this particular case.
So I think as the applicant, I would agree with.
Sir,
Oh, sorry.
It's really for, if they have questions, they've closed the public hearing.
Should we close the public hearing? And
Yeah, if you have other questions for staff, for the applicant, but you've already closed the public hearing, so really it's planning commission discussion now. If you want to reopen it to take questions from the applicant or staff, you can do that.
Well, here's what I think behind it. I wouldn't have an issue granting or approving an extension, but I'm not going to go outside of what the city ordinance states. I don't want to open up the window for issues down the road.
Future issues down
Right.
the road. I agree with you, and the language is pretty clear that you get a year after each stage. And the first stage was to break ground of construction, and next stage of each phase of construction. So I really like the project. I want to see it built, but like Commissioner Brogy mentioned, I feel like our hands are tied with how the language is written and what's expected from the project within that 1 year. How does everyone else feel in regards to that?
I've been on the commission since the beginning of when they first came, and I know how diligent and how passionate the owners were to bring this project to fruition. And unfortunately, they did have some setbacks that were beyond their control. So I would be willing, and I know I really hate to say this, to grant the 1-year extension, even though our hands are handcuffed, but I would be willing to do that because I know how passionate they are, and I believe that they will build this, and it's a great need for the city and our residents of Fillmore here. And we would make that whole section of the 126 look so much better. And the owner didn't have to do this, but he even went beyond and wanted to, and agreed to put in that traffic signal there. So that's my stance. I know it's going beyond what our code says, but in this case, I think I would be able to do it because I know, and I've been with it for so long, and I believe that this owner would follow through with and construct a great project.
Okay, and I feel as you do with regard to, their passion for the project, and I felt the same way, as I said, going back to when they first presented it to City Council. As an RV owner myself, I thought this would be a great project, for this community, and the idea of, the financial aspect of it that would come to the city would be great, and it's a service that the city needs. However, I am stuck on that municipal code, and I don't like the idea of the possibility of someone coming up and challenging, the decision on it. I think that's a possibility. And, now speaking to the applicants, I can't reiterate this enough that I am really, really enthused about this project. But unfortunately, I'd have to lean with the other two council members and say that I can't agree with the extension, but I would strongly, strongly encourage you to come back and let's start the clock over again. So that sounded kind of like a motion.
It does. Can we have a motion to?
I will make the motion to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 22-1040, denying modification number 3, request for an additional 1-year time extension to July 16, 2023.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Nay.
All right.
Section 7, business
Thank you.
items. Thank you. I see we have none. And we'll move into Section 8, reports and communication. Section 8A. I'll hand it over to Planning and Community Development Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any items to report on, but I'll take any questions you may have.
It's been a while that we haven't had the project kind of.
Oh, development activity list.
Development activity. I don't know if any of the commissioners have any questions in regards to specific projects.
I haven't run them down with them, but I can do it off the top of my head. But if you had a question.
Just one. was on a walk the other day behind Rio Vista School, and the wooden fence that separates the walkway, there's a lot of broken wood back there. Is there something going on that we don't know, or is it just renegade people?
Vandalism. So if you see those things, take a photograph of them, send it to me, and we'll do our best to get it corrected. So at this time, the developer is making those corrections.
Yeah, there's a lot of graffiti back there too.
And we're trying to address the graffiti. It's those two items, vandalism and graffiti.
I sent them a small one.
Can you send them to me, please? Yeah.
Does that apply to other sections of the bike path for broken wood as well, like broken post or?
For the Bridges subdivision, if you see anything, you can send them to me. That's where most of the damage is occurring right now. Citywide, if you can forward those to the Public Works, I forgot her title, but to Shannon Prentice, and she'll take care of it.
There's an app on the city, you can take a picture, and then you can send it directly from that app to the city, and it goes directly to Public Works.
I'm not sure how functional it is at the moment.
It works.
It's still work. Did you use it in the last month?
Yeah, I used it on some graffiti I saw in the alley, and it was gone the next day.
Okay.
Yeah, they respond pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of projects and things that we're working on, you reviewed the North Fillmore specific plan, and that's going to the city council probably in August. We're going to make the corrections that you recommended, the public comments that we've received, particularly the Nexus study. And the city council just approved the contract to do that kind of work. We're very near to launching the housing element. We're a year behind everybody else on the housing element. It'll go to you, and we'll have a workshop on that also, and then it'll go to the city council. So we have a way to go on that. The mini mansion project is nearing completion. We talk about it often. We're really pleased and happy with that affordable project. It looks very nice. It just had a grand opening 3 weeks ago or a month ago. We have a project in the North Fillmore area that we're reviewing. And if you recall, a couple of months ago, you approved a project of about 88 units along River Street called Riverview Garden. So they're preparing construction plans for that. That should come into us for plan check very soon. They're pursuing their 143 unit project that's adjacent to them. We received the application and we're deep into review of that. That'll be about a year-long process before you see it. But that's a very large project, 4 stories tall. So it's very dense. We're reviewing another project that was resubmitted to the city in November of 2021, and they replied back and they submitted it back to us in May. It's one full city block. You had originally reviewed it, I think, last year by the applicant, People Self-Help. You gave a lot of comments to it. They've completely revised it, and it's a different kind of an application. It's an application that you're not going to review, and it's an application that city council is not going to review. So the burden of review is on me, and I don't review it through a public hearing process either. It's basically over the counter. It's 50 units instead of 80. The previous unit was 3 stories, 80 units, and we were concerned on how immense it was. So it's an over-the-counter type of permit, and I'm reviewing it now with Brian's help. It's interesting to review a project of that size without having to present it to you or present it to the city council. So I'm going to do my best to follow our regulations. The developer constantly reminds us that the state law is to review a project with objective standards only. So all subjectiveness is stricken out and removed, and it's purely objective codes. And you know how it is when we review projects, we like to improve upon it. So anyway, that's the path we're taking. And the developer's doing their best to move forward and to make some changes, and we're doing our best to review it. But again, it will not get reviewed by you. As that project proceeds, I will inform you where we are and inform the city council. And my goal is to approve the project. If it meets every zoning ordinance requirement, I'm going to approve it. And I have to, that's the state law. So we're going to do our best to have it designed appropriately and ready to go. Brian has in plan check with the microbrewery. You approved that. That quickly went right into microbrewery, and he's plan checking that. I think we're on our third or second plan check. And Popeye's Chicken is about to submit for plan check review too. They're working on their plans. I think you approved that only about 2 or 3 months ago, and so they're getting ready to resubmit. There are a couple of things that they need to do before they submit. And then the Bridges subdivision is ongoing. The sales aren't what they used to be. They would sell units before they obtain building permits. And now they're sitting on the lot for about a week before they're actually sold. That's actually fantastic, right? They're not sitting there for months, but they're there for a week. So it's just showing a little sign of things slowing down a little bit, but they're still selling and they're still moving fast, and the applicant's happy. I don't have any other projects that I recall, but I will put together that list for you, and we'll review that list comprehensively. I'll forward it to you ahead of time so you can take a look at it and be prepared for questions.
Thank you. Move to section 8B, Planning Commission and brief reports. Is there any from the Planning Commissioners?
I just wanted to remind my fellow commissioners that there some legislation coming through Sacramento regarding ADUs, and I would review them and contact your local representatives to tell them how you feel about it, because some of them really affect how we make decisions here or on the Planning Commission. And so I would start reviewing those and getting back to our representatives.
So that's what I wanted to address as well, not just that the ADU legislation is SB 897. So in addition to that, I wanted to share with you that the League of California Cities is providing what they call legislative lunches. It's all via Zoom, and David Malinax, who's the channel district chair, for lack of a better word, for this area for the League of California Cities, and he's coordinating this, and they actually had the Zoom today, and I participated. It's an hour long during lunch hour from 12 to 1, and he sent out notices, emails, when the next one's coming up. It's sounds like it's going to be probably twice a month or thereabouts. But so throughout this hour, he had Jason Ryan from the League present all these pieces of legislation that address housing that is having a huge impact on the cities losing control over what we want done in our own communities. And the ADU is one. The project that Kevin was talking about earlier, where he's going to review it and approve it, and will not come to the commission and will not go to council. That's the type of legislation that we're talking about. I have a whole list of it here, but I would encourage all of you to start following any emails that if you aren't receiving emails from David Malinax, then do that. Contact the League. And be sure you get in the loop on that, because this was extremely helpful, and it actually makes me furious. what's happening here as far as taking away, removing the control of the local cities. And Sacramento saying this is how you're going to do it. One size fits all. If this is how we want LA to do it, Fillmore's going to do it the same way, and it just makes no sense. Said my piece. Okay.
I agree.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the Planning Commission to the regular meeting scheduled for July 20th, 2022 at 6:30 PM in the City Council chambers here in Fillmore.